Hi, this is Cora from the Holler to the World, and I'm glad that you have joined today. And here with me is my sister Nella and my sister Mary, and we are gathered together for a reception and a birthday celebration for Nella's husband Ralph, and for my birthday coming up. And we all got together, and also with our brother Victor Jr., who was here today, but he does not want to be videoed, and he's not here right now. But in the future, we're going to have a Junior come on and talk. But we just want to share a little bit with you some of our childhood stories. Nella and I have been on before, and we talked about some stories from our childhood, our one in grade school, and we talked about our sister Ruth, who has already gone home to be with the Lord. And in the meantime, our brother Frank also has gone home to be with the Lord, and we're going to talk about him maybe a little bit. But we want to just share, and I wanted to get Mary on here. She is the oldest. She's our senior commander. And I was the baby girl. We had Mary, and then Ruth, then Nella, then me. And then we had two brothers, Victor Jr. and Frank. And so I just want to ask them some questions and maybe get started telling some stories. And since Mary is the oldest, and she was around before we started and was with them a lot when they first moved to Kansas Creek and moved up in the holler and found some ways like how they did laundry, how we did gardening, some of the chores we did. And so Mary is an educator. She has a master's degree in something.
An area in social studies and a minor in history. And I have worked with emotionally handicapped, orthopedically handicapped children, trainables, all ages, and I love my special education children. And I have the nickname the Little General. I am the shortest one of the group,
Yes.
the oldest and the bossiest, and Little General is my name. We moved to the mouth of the holler in the winter of 1949 and 1950 when Cora was a baby. We drove from Clay County in the back of a pickup truck with a tarp over it. Ruth and I and Daddy in the back with all of our possessions. Cora was a baby, and Nella, they rode up front with our mother, Emily. We could only get part way up Kansas Creek, and we had to stop at our grandfather's, David Williams's house, who made whiskey during Prohibition for the federal government. His largest barrel he sold to Hatfield from the Hatfield and McCoys.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And so we moved there, and the truck could only go so far, so they had a team of horses and a wagon, and we stayed at Grandpa Dave's house until they went up and built a fire. They came back and got us. The first night, you could see the moon and the stars in the cracks out of the house.
I don't think there were windows, were there?
There was windows and doors, but they had used it to store hay. Nobody lived in it a long time. No electricity, only a fireplace. And that was our first night at the mouth of the holler.
Uncle Charlie's old place,
It was
right?
Uncle Charlie's house, and Grandpa Dave shot him, his own son, because he rode his horse in the cornfield, and then later he gave him that land and the house to pay him back.
Wow. I also heard he said if he stepped foot on the porch, he would shoot him. He shot him twice.
Right, and the Grandpa Dave shot other people, but he never spent a time in jail.
Okay, then.
He was a very rough mountaineer.
But Mary is a prime example of if you get education, you can leave the holler. And our dad, and Mom especially, she had a high school diploma way back in the 40s, like 42
She graduated from Berea High School.
And Daddy wasn't able to go to school like he wanted to, but he always wanted us to go.
Yes.
And so you can go from the holler to the world.
Yes.
And where all have you traveled? Well,
we have traveled in other countries. We have traveled most of the United States, and right now we live on Strom Thurmond Lake in McCormick County, South Carolina, which is a retirement community.
Beautiful
and very
golf course.
happy there. We have two large golf courses that people come from all over, and so we're very happy there. And our childhood Mama made our dresses out of feed sacks. We were very poor, but we didn't know that because everybody else was poor.
Right.
And we were loved beyond measure in Christian
Yes.
home. And we all had managed, like Cora said, Daddy said, the only way out of poverty is an education.
Yes.
And
He loved to read. He would read the Courier Journal newspaper.
He was very
every day.
smart. Our father was, yes.
Every
And
day.
our mother was too.
Yes, very much so.
Right.
And Nella also is educated and has a master's degree. I'm the lone one with the least education, probably, of the group now, because I only went 2 years. But Nella also
Moorhead.
got her degree and taught for
42 years.
yeah. So education is very important in
Yeah.
this family.
Yeah, I had a degree in business from Moorhead State. It became a university while I was there, and went from a college to a university in the late 60s. And about the time I graduated in 69, the Vietnam War was, coming, and demonstrations and things like that. Yeah, so, I remember when I was at Moorhead, we had different people would come and rallies and things like this, and it was the Vietnam War was, and had acquaintances and friends, those guys especially, went to college and maybe didn't go to the war until later. So,
Right.
yeah. So I taught for years at George Rogers Clark High School, Winchester, Kentucky, and in the last few years that I taught, it's called a home hospital program, and I visited students that were out that were sick and could not attend school regularly. So.
Right.
And I remember when I was little, growing up on Candace Creek too, some of the vivid memories. You'd wake up in the morning, and we girls, it was like a 2-bedroom house, and one of the bedrooms was used for the living room too. And we would wake up in the morning. We had two double beds in this room where 4 little girls were sleeping, and you'd have ice froze on the windows and that kind of thing.
You'd grab your clothes and run in the living room by the stove and put your clothes on because it was so cold.
Right. And so we used to walk to go to school until later, about the 4th, 5th grade, bus started running up Air Holler, and so we were bussed out to go.
Well, Mary
down to
went
Blaine.
a lot longer to the one-room grade school.
I was in the 7th grade before we had a road that a bus could travel on to come and pick us up, and it went just beyond our house, and the other children all walked down to our house from the other hollers to catch the bus to go to school. My first teaching job was in 1967, a one-room school in Wolfe County, Campton, Kentucky,
Wow.
the poorest county in the United States. I had 26 children from the 1st grade to the 8th grade. Some of them were almost my age. They were bigger than I was. And I had this one boy, great old big boy, and he got up and was poking in the fire, and I told him to sit down. And he stood there, and I looked straight up at him, and I said, "You sit down, or it'll be the last thing you do." He walked over and sat down. I never had another bit of trouble that school year.
You were by yourself all day, like at the school with the kids?
Out in the boonies, nobody around, just me and the children.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
And the one-room schools was a great asset.
Yes.
The children, I would do the smaller children, then I would do the older children, and the older girls, we had a hot plate and a refrigerator and government food, and they would fix lunch, and those little children would sit there and listen and learn about history and geography and all of this stuff.
It opened
And
the
it was
world to
like
them.
a family.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered, I taught the last one-room school in Kentucky, and after that, they consolidated. To this day, it is preserved, and I have a picture of it.
Oh, wow. You'll have to
And
send it
it's
to me.
historical one-room school.
Wow. Well, if you send it to me, I'll post it with this. But also our aunts, our mother didn't really have opportunity to teach, but her sisters all started schools and
Educators,
taught
yeah.
in one-room grade schools. And we were from eastern Kentucky, the Appalachian region, and a lot of people did not get out because they didn't have education or they didn't have opportunity to go to college. But since our parents felt so strongly that they wanted us to have an education, and my grandfather had got my mother and her siblings out to school. They went to Berea to school, and her brothers and sisters, I think they pretty much all got a degree, maybe
Oh, they
except
did.
Roscoe, and he had his own business.
Right.
But they were educators also. And so we're just really proud of our heritage, proud of where we came from. And when I started this YouTube, I just wanted to tell some stories about our childhood, tell some stories about our background, about how we lived and how we came from the holler out to the world. And like I said, I've traveled outside the country a lot, to Africa, to India. I know Nellie's been to
Right.
China,
Right.
and
Korea.
and Mexico, and Greece, and
Europe.
Italy.
Yeah. Oh, we have been.
Mary, I don't think you've been out of the continental United States, but you've been everywhere else.
Right.
I take trips every year.
Cruises and other things where I've been in other
Yeah.
Puerto Rico and other.
I've said on here before that when we sat on our front porch, right directly in front was a big field and a creek and a hill. And then to our left was the yard, the creek, and a hill. To our right was like a pasture, a road, and a hill. Behind us were the barns, the chicken house, and the holler and the hill.
Where people lived up the
Yeah.
holler
Yeah.
behind us.
So-
And those people would walk down every day for the mail, and they would come and sit on our front porch. We've been talking about our education and our poverty, and Cora mentioned our creek. I'll never forget, there was a hole of water at the bridge, and Daddy was working with the highway department, and they happened to come by, and the 4 girls had decided to go skinny dipping. And
I was
Daddy,
little. It wasn't me.
Daddy caught us, and needless to say, the little switch followed us all the way to the house.
Oh,
don't
my
remember
gosh.
I was the oldest one, and so I should have known better, but I didn't.
You never got in trouble.
Oh,
Well, that time you did.
that time, and
I must have been little because I don't remember it.
you don't remember?
Not at
oh,
all.
no,
Not
Daddy
at
come
all.
along, and we were there right at the road to skinny dipping, and so then Junior will not be on, but when Junior was still in diapers, he was a toddler. He was running around, and Mama was shucking corn, and he was there, and she said to change his diaper. So I wrestled him down and took off his diaper and put a clean one on, and he kept crying and carrying on. Well, when we went to change him again, I had pinned his skin, and it pulled loose with the diaper pin, one of those big old bunny diaper pins.
Poor
Yeah.
Junior. We dropped him also. Carried him on a pillow with all 4 corners.
I thought you dropped him.
No, we all 4 had him, each one
I
on
don't
a corner.
remember that.
And he
I don't
just
remember
slid
that.
down and fell on the floor.
Yeah.
I would have been little. I'd have been like 5. Yeah, I was only 5. But I didn't drop him. I couldn't have carried him. We were guilty. Y'all were guilty.
I don't remember that, but okay. If you
I
say
know.
it happened.
I know. Somebody dropped him because Uncle Kurt was coming down the road, and he heard us screaming and hollering and crying, and he stopped to see what the commotion
He was only like 2 weeks old or something. He was real little.
Yeah, he
this
was
time.
a baby. Yeah.
Yeah, like really little. But we have been on here probably enough. I mean, something that we could do a little bit more. You think of something funny, or you want to tell Nellie some kind of story you can think of, or Mary, you want to tell something else. I talked to Mary about how Mommy washed clothes when we first moved up there to the holler, which by the time I came along, we had a Maytag wringer washer that we heated the water, filled up the washer, and then filled up the rinse and did all that. But you were earlier.
Yes, we did not have electricity, so we heated water in a big black kettle that we used to render lard
Like a
in after
cauldron,
we
really.
killed the hogs. And she had a scrub washboard. Do you have the washboard?
No. Frank may have had it, or Junior probably has
Something
it.
happened to. Okay.
One of the boys had it.
Anyway, she would have to do that by hand until we got the wringer washing machine. We got electricity.
But she had like wash tubs. She didn't go to the creek. I
Oh,
thought
no.
like earlier at some point when she lived where Nellie was born, they washed in the creek. Had the
I still remember going over
washboard
the
in
hill to
creek.
see Grandma Bricky when we went up
Right.
there and over the hill,
We
and there
went
were
over-
women washing their clothes in the creek.
Yeah,
Well,
that creek
back
that we
then it was clean water.
Of course, they had that scrub board, you know,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
would use.
but
with
that was your
clothes.
alternative. What were you supposed to do? You know,
Yeah,
you had to have
yeah.
clean clothes. So
Do you all remember the 4th of July? That like we were poor, but they had gotten hot dogs and buns and marshmallows, and we were gonna have a fire. and we got up in the woods, and nobody had a match or anything to light the fire, so we ate the hot dogs cold. But you're probably too young for that, yeah.
Oh, I remember. I think Corlo and I talked about this before, but it was Memorial Weekend, and some people came, and we had a cemetery up on the hill, and they came up there to put flowers on the cemetery, and after they left, we went up there and got the flowers and brought them down home so that we could play with them. Right, yeah. Mama got after us and sent us right back.
Yes, we had to take them all right back and put them back on the grave.
But the worst thing, we couldn't remember which graves we got them off of, so we put little on each one of the graves. We didn't want to neglect anybody.
They actually had prettier flowers, I bet, by the time we got finished.
And do you remember the time when Uncle Dave died and it was rainy and the earthworms were coming up out of the ground, and Raylene was there, and we got a worm, and she was terrified, and we would point it towards her, and she'd scream and holler. Daddy got after us real good after that during the funeral.
They were those big old night crawlers. They were big old worms.
And she was scared of them, and we knew it.
And we would.
I was too little. I don't remember.
That was a little girl that lived up the holler, and
Cora
with
uses
her grandma
the
and grandpa.
excuse she's too little for everything that we got in trouble
you're
with.
6 years older than me, so when I was only like 2. You were 8, getting in trouble. I'd be 2.
But I remember Junior and Frank would chase you with frogs.
Oh my gosh!
And you were so scared.
Frank was the worst.
Yeah.
And if we talk about our beloved Frank, he's the baby, and we just can't hardly stand the fact that he's not with us, because he was a force to be reckoned with. He had personality unbelievable, and he was just a big strong guy, and you just felt like everything was okay, when he was around. But he chased me with frogs, and it was not fun. He brought one time in a shoebox in the house. I was sitting on the couch on the phone, and he came in with a shoebox. He was probably like 8 years old, maybe, or 9. And he came in, he's like, I have a frog, I have a present for you. I'm like, you're not going to bring a frog in the house. About that time, the lid popped open, that frog plopped right in my lap.
If I remember right, it was like a Sunday night, Mom and Dad had gone to church, and we were watching Walt Disney or something, and I remember you screaming and running through the house.
So I chased him, and I could have killed him, but he was special to us, and he was a baby for Mary, because you being older, he was quite a bit older.
I was 14 years older than Frank, so I took care of Frank a lot, and I'm almost a second mama to him, and I really miss him, and I really miss Ruth. She could get into some things. One day she crawled under the ironing board and got it locked on her head, and so we had to go to the barn. Mama was milking, and somebody held one end of the ironing board, one the other one, and walked her up to the barn to get it out with the ironing board over her head. And then Nella was usually one that, you were the one that jumped out in the corn crib on the scythe and cut your toe, wasn't you?
Yeah, I almost cut it off.
Probably so.
Nella was hopped around the lot.
And I got my hand caught in the pump of the water for the water at the pump at the elementary school, and got it caught and tore my fingernail off, but we finally got it out of the pump.
Can you imagine being mommy though, and going through all that, seeing your children walking towards you with an ironing board stuck on their neck, and because Daddy worked away.
Probably got a good laugh out of it.
He had to go away to Columbus sometimes to get a job, and
at the grain elevator.
When I was in the 8th grade, he got a really good job with Ashland Oil, but up until that time, he just worked wherever he could. And
he worked for the highway department,
he
would go out to Pickerington, Ohio, and stay with his sister, and worked at the grain elevators.
And Mommy had to stay home with the 6 kids and take care of us and milk the cows.
And do you remember at night she would have nightmares, and we could hear her screaming and go in and wake her up.
Yeah, she was afraid. I remember
she was
that.
afraid.
I did not know that.
Because she was by herself there with us, and she had nightmares.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she had nightmares all the time.
Wow, you miss a lot. You get a lot of advantages, but you miss a lot.
And another thing with Sister Ruth, there was a post that fell off the porch, and it was laying in the yard. And she picked up one end, and I picked up one end, and we were going to carry it off farther away. and I dropped my in for something, and it went down and split her leg open, and she had to have stitches.
Yep.
And she had that scar
I
all
remember
over
that
I
big
remember
scar.
that
It was
scar.
a
I
big
didn't-
scar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know how she
Ruth
got
was
it.
an awesome, loving, giving person. She had a different
big heart.
temperament,
Had
but
a big heart. Yeah.
man, she would love people. Just love, do anything, give you anything.
Right.
After she got married and come back home, she was always bringing us things. And we'd go up and stay with her. And first time Nellie and I ever ate pizza,
All right.
we went up
It's up in
there.
Columbus.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to visit her. Yeah.
So they introduced us to pizza. Yeah, it was fun. But we're going to wrap this up, and we'll get on and do another one because we'll be back together sometime. And one of our mom's last wishes was that we would stay together. That was pretty much one of the last few things that she talked about with us, is that she always wanted us to love each other and always wanted us to stay close to each other. And so we really do try. Mary lives in South Carolina, I'm North Carolina, Nellie's Kentucky, Junior's Kentucky, but we actually try once or twice a year, you know, at least to get together, and so our kids can see each other. And Nellie's daughter, son, and grandkids were all here today, and we got a chance to be with them, and Junior's daughter and his grandson came, and so we got acquainted, and they get
Right.
to visit each other a little bit
And the
more.
Ruth's daughter, Savannah, was here today.
Savannah was here, Ruth's
Yeah,
daughter,
her husband.
and
And
CO was here. And little Ralph, Nellie's son, little Ralph came
Yeah.
with his wife and daughters, and
yeah.
we just want them to all get to know each other and to feel the love that we feel, you know, and just know what a great family they came from. So we're going to sign off. Please like and subscribe, and we're going to be on here for more stories. And we just want to tell y'all goodbye. Y'all have any parting words to say?
No. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Our families, one more thing. Our mom and dad always loved the Lord. I mean, they always made that important to us too, not just education,
Right.
but to go to church and to do right by your neighbors, to be saved, to be going to heaven. And what? So I married a preacher. He's our cameraman, CL. And so anyway, we got married and have been in the church, and Mary works in the church, and Nellie's been in the
Right.
church, and that's been a great important part of our life and part of our history. And so that's all we have to say. Good night. Can y'all say
Good
good
night.
night?
Good night.
Good night.